Do you really get a cry if you've been unhealthy your whole life? So for me, it was like you kind of did this to yourself. And I know that's not necessarily the case, but that's kind of the pressure that I put on myself when I found out, which is dumb, but it's what I did. My name is Crystal. I was diagnosed in 2022 with colon cancer. I currently live in Washington. In about 2012, I started to notice there was blood in my stool after I went to the bathroom, and it would last for a couple of days. And so I would Google it, and it would say that it could be anything from hemorrhoids to colon cancer. Like, there was just so many things it could be, but naturally I'm just like, well, I don't have cancer, so it's probably hemorrhoids or something. And I would just kind of let it go because it would stop after a couple of days. A couple of years ago, I was like, maybe I should go to the doctor. So I did go to a doctor, and I told him I'm seeing this, and he was like, okay, let's schedule a colonoscopy. So we had that all set up, and I tried the liquid that they give you to prep for the colonoscopy, and it made me really sick. So I wasn't able to finish the prep. So I wasn't able to do the colonoscopy because they wouldn't be able to see anything. And then I didn't reschedule. I didn't go back. And then as the years went on, it became easier to just kind of ignore the fact that I'm noticing the blood because I didn't do anything about it, and it goes away. It comes back, but it goes away. And so I was like, it's fine. In 2022, I started getting like a really, really excruciating pain, like in my lower abdomen. And it was almost like a menstrual cramp, but way worse. So I went to an urgent care, and I was like, hey, I have this pain. And they're like, hey, let's do an ultrasound. So they gave me a number to set up an ultrasound. The pain went away after a couple of days. I never set up the ultrasound. So I'm like, this is fine. Let's move on. I eventually started, after a couple of weeks, started getting really bad UTIs. And it wasn't like a normal UTI. There was like a really disgusting smell that I hadn't noticed before when I'd had UTIs in the past. So I would go to the doctor, get an antibiotic for that UTI. It would go away, and then like a week or two later, it would come back. So I'd go back. They'd give me a different type of antibiotic, and this went on for probably 2 or 3 months. And they just kept trying different types of antibiotics, and they just weren't working. And they're finally like, let's get you into a specialist. I do the CAT scan, and it was like 4:30, and they closed at 5, but I hadn't even left the parking lot of the center that did the CAT scan before they called me, and they're like, hey, can you come back in the morning to do a scope of your bladder? And I thought that was really weird because I've worked in a hospital before, and I know that like radiologists aren't just like right here, like on it. So the fact that they looked at it so quick really scared me. So I spent that night just like super nervous, not sure what was going on. And I went back the next morning. They did the scope of my bladder, and they noticed something was intruding into it. And they said, we're not sure it's cancer. It doesn't look like bladder cancer. But we're going to send it to like a bigger hospital. So there's a hospital called LDS Hospital in Utah. They sent it to a specialist there, and it ended up in a colorectal surgeon's pile somewhere. And they were explaining that it looks like it could be a fistula. I didn't know what that was. So what had happened was somehow so here's my bladder, whatever was intruding into it, had caused a hole and created a hole in there. So it was coming from my colon, whatever this was, and it kind of made a connection between my colon and my bladder. So things from my colon were seeping into that hole into my bladder. So there was air going through there, there was feces going through there, there was all sorts of things. So it was coming in and just creating like an internal infection constantly. So I got a colonoscopy set up with this colorectal surgeon, and it was set up for like a Tuesday, and I think it was about Friday night. I like just the pains were coming back really, really bad, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Like it was so excruciating, and I had like, I don't know, for a couple of weeks, I just like slept with a heating pad and had just like heat on it constantly, just not sure what to do. So I eventually just went to the ER in the middle of the night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And so this is the weekend before the first colonoscopy is scheduled. I get to the ER, they do a CAT scan immediately and notice the same mass that they noticed before at the other place that I went. And they started doing some testing, and they kept me in the hospital, and they decided to, I'm not sure what it was called, but they gave me some really heavy drugs, and they took me back into like I don't know where they do the CAT scans, but they took one of these really big needle things and put it into my stomach and put another needle into that to take a biopsy of it. They're like, probably shouldn't wait until Tuesday to see what this is. Let's just see if we can test it. So they did, and they found that it was cancerous. And and then they explained to me at that point that the fistula was causing all the infections, and it was a tumor, it was cancerous, whatever. But at that point, they decided that the best course of action, just to prevent because they knew I was going to have chemo. So to prevent the waste from getting into my bladder and causing the infections during the chemo, they decided to do a colostomy bag. So, and that was just to kind of prevent as much feces from going down into that area as possible, just while they were trying to shrink with the chemo. I will be 100% honest. I wasn't terribly surprised because I have always been really unhealthy. I've always eaten really unhealthy. I've always, like, just a lot of fast food, a lot of processed food. That's just like how I've always lived. And then there was a period where I drank pretty heavily for years. So when I did hear it, it was like, yeah, this sucks. But it also, part of me was like, and I don't know, that's really hard to say about yourself, but I wasn't really shocked. I had a friend there with me, and she was really emotional, and I don't know, I think I was just like trying to be like strong. I don't know. I just like, I didn't want to cry, but I also was like, do you really get to cry if you've been unhealthy your whole life? So for me, it was like, you kind of did this to yourself. And I know that's not necessarily the case, but that's kind of the pressure that I put on myself when I found out, which is dumb, but it's what I did. I also had, in the past couple of months, just with everything not making sense, just like all these UTIs coming and just constantly feeling sick and that like really excruciating pain that I had spent a lot of time like preparing myself for the worst, because it was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. And so I was reading things, and things were pointing to cancer. So I was like, it's just unlike anything I had ever felt or experienced before. So I had kind of just mentally prepared myself for the worst. I remember calling my friend, and just crying one day just because I just knew it was something like, and I just started crying and I was like, I don't want people to have to come to my house and help me. Like, I don't want to have to ask people to come watch my son. I don't want people like, because I was like a very private person. Like, I just didn't want people like in my house, in my business, in my life. And I knew like if this is something serious, people are going to have to come and help me and I'm going to have to accept help. But I remember crying and just like breaking down. And she was like, don't panic yet. If you panic now and it's nothing, then you've panicked for nothing. And if you panic now and you panic then you panic twice. And she's like, just wait and see. And I'm like, I don't need to wait. Like, I just already know it's not a good thing. Like, something's wrong. They did the surgery the next day. Um, they did the colostomy bag. And then and I still have my port just because I don't dare let go of it. They keep asking me if I want to take it out, and I just don't because it's was such a lifesaver. They were really neglectful, and nothing was coming through the colostomy bag. Um, it was just like building up inside of me, and the only place for like waste to escape was through that hole that the fistula had caused in my bladder. So there was the only place for any feces to get out of my body was through. So I was using the bathroom and it was just straight like feces. It was really gross. And I kept trying to tell the nurses and they just like completely ignored me. They were just like, that's normal. This is normal when you have a fistula. And I'm like, hey, but I've had a fistula for months and it hasn't been like this. This is different. They just refused to listen to me. They were like just getting me ready to send me home, even though nothing was coming out of the bag. And I finally so the doctor that I was mentioning that I was supposed to have the colonoscopy with the next week, I ended up calling her while I was in the hospital at this different hospital. And she called me back and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Like, they're telling me this is normal. They're not doing like labs. They're ready to send me home. I'm feeling worse. And they just keep telling me it's normal. And I'm like, is this normal? And she's like, no, it's not. So these two hospitals happen to be in the same network. She was able to look at all the results and kind of like get an idea of what was going on. And she got super frustrated with the doctor that I was left with. And she's like, you need to do these tests. You need to do some labs. Like, you can't send her home like this. So they did a test, and I don't remember what it was called, but they put liquid up my backside and like shot it through to see if it came out into the colostomy bag, and it didn't. So that told him that the surgery was done wrong. And she's like, you just need to have surgery right now and have this redone. And I was super nervous because I didn't want the same hospital to do it because I don't know, I just didn't want to die. And I felt like they weren't going to take care of me. So they took me in an ambulance to this other hospital. And that original surgeon redid that. I was in the hospital for a total of, I think, 23 days from start to finish this go around. So they finally got that settled, and I was able to use the colostomy bag to get waste out. And then they started chemo, and I think I did chemo once a week. I would go in and do an infusion for I think 4 to 6 hours. The whole reason that I had the colostomy bag in the first place was to prevent the infections, but they weren't stopping. They were actually getting worse. And I'm not sure the reason for that, but they were getting really, really bad to the point where I was just like super sick, having to go into the hospital, having to have hospital stays. I think we did 4 or 5 rounds of chemo before they realized that it just wasn't working. It wasn't shrinking. And by this point, I had moved on to a different, like a cancer hospital. And I had the most amazing team there. There was a colorectal surgeon, a gynecologist, and a urologist, because they realized that the hole in my bladder was significant enough that they might not be able to save it. So there was a bunch of things they had to take out and do when they did the surgery, but they were like, we can't keep waiting for chemo to shrink the tumor, because like you're gonna die of an infection if we don't do something about it. So they set up the surgery, and the urologist told me, he told me that it was possible that I was going to lose my bladder, but he was going to try his best to save it. But he said, he just explained that you have to have a certain amount of bladder so that enough liquid can be in it, or it just doesn't work. He's like, if the hole's too big, I'm not going to be able to like sew that up. So you might have to have a urostomy, and that's permanent. That's for the rest of your life. And it was kind of hard to hear that, because when I got the colostomy bag, they just kept reminding me that it's temporary, like it's going to get reversed. So just super ironic to get colon cancer and lose your bladder over it. But so yeah, they did the surgery. They ended up taking out my bladder, my right ovary, my uterus. I woke up to a urostomy bag and an ileostomy. So they, while the lower part of my intestines were healing, they had to have things going out. So I had an ileostomy at that point. That one did get reversed eventually, but yeah, I woke up with no bladder. When they first told me, and it was a few months prior to the surgery, that they explained to me that I might lose my bladder. And I don't know why, but that was the hardest, I think, thing that they told me. I just remember calling my boss and crying and just, and I think it's because that's the only thing that they made very clear is permanent. Like that's not something that you can go back from. But everything else, it was like, we can maybe get rid of the cancer, we can reverse the colostomy. But this was like a forever thing. So that one like really got me. And then I woke up to it, and I was able to mentally prepare for it, but still going into the surgery, I was hopeful that I would wake up without it, that they were going to be able to fix it, and they weren't. So that was really hard. It was really hard getting used to, I mean, it was the same concept as a colostomy bag, just changing it and stuff, but it was different because it was liquid. So learning how to, obviously with liquid, there's more leaks, there's all sorts of things. And for a long time, I was kind of bitter about it. I just remember doing my bag changes and just crying. I'd rather just be alive than not have a bag. Like let's just do what's gonna like make sure I am alive. And the urologist has, just because I'm young, has just assumed that like the appearance of it all is gonna bother me more than it did. But I've just never been like, I don't know, like I never show off that area anyway. So it's not like it's really impacted like the way that I dress or do anything. I mean, I think the hardest part is just like the constant worry about if it's gonna leak when I'm in public. And I mean, it has before, or like, and just the dumbest little things can trigger it. There's no way of like knowing, but it's like, if it leaks, you're essentially just like peeing all over yourself. So it's really gross to even think about. It's kind of strange because like I've got this big bulge under my shirt, like when it starts to fill up, and it's like on one side. And I know that people are just like, what is that? So I feel like I do have to empty it more than I would have had to go to the bathroom. So like if you when you regularly go to the bathroom, like you don't see it. It's like not like a big bulge. So I'm just constantly going to the bathroom, so there's not like a big bulge under my shirt because I don't know. It's weird, and I'm not as self-conscious about it as I used to be. But for a while there, it was really strange going places just with this constant like big bulge under my shirt. But But I think there's also like a weird anxiety that comes with it. And I think it's just that, I guess it would honestly just be equivalent to just like having this fear of peeing your pants in public. Like, because you never know if it's going to leak or what reason there would be. Like, if I got like a faulty bag one time that had a hole in it that I didn't realize. And then there's all of a sudden, and no one really knows what it is because it's on your stomach, but you know what it is. So it's just like this constant anxiety and this like fear of like peeing myself in public. It's strange. I really am grateful that it happened. I was in a really low spot in my life before. And like I said, I was super introverted. I didn't want anyone in my house. I didn't want anyone in my business. I kind of like pushed my friends away just because of other life things that had happened. And I think having to like let those people back in and having to like let them come and help me and like sit with me during chemo and like take care of my son while I was in the hospital helped me just, I don't know, just put me back in the right mindset of like, you really do need people, and like you need those relationships because like when things get bad, like you need to like maintain those. So I spend a lot more time just building relationships with the people that matter and not pushing people away. It's just made such a huge difference. And obviously it's harder for me to go and do things with, I mean, it's not the end of the world to go do things with a urostomy bag, but there's a whole thing like you have to pack extra stuff and like just in case bag and like extra clothes just in case. And there's like this anxiety all the time, but it's like I'm willing to do more things and like spend more time with people that matter. There's a whole different perspective about and I'm still super introverted. I don't necessarily want to go places and do things, but I understand that they're important for my relationships. So without this happening, I don't know that I would have kind of like dug myself out of that hole. There wouldn't have been a reason for it. So I'm pretty grateful in that sense. I've let people in, and just getting out and doing things with my friends has, I don't know, it's like changed everything. And when I do sit and feel bad for myself about things, it just kind of gets worse. So just like letting those relationships continue to build is super good for my mental health. Calling people and asking for help when I need it, and just allowing myself to like know that people care is just something that I didn't do before. Let people help you. Like it's not something that you should try to do alone. It's just really hard. Just like let people in. I just think that's the only thing that got me through it. And just like reading other people's stories and just trying to understand how other people got through it kind of helped me. I just started running my mouth on TikTok about it just because I feel bad that people think that I think it's weird if someone reaches out, but I'm just like, I'm just gonna start telling my story, and then if you want to see it, you can. Like, just because that's how I was able to get through it.